All right, so welcome everybody to the next episode of the Founders Era. I'm Ron Timoshenko,
I'm Terrell Waltz.
and today we're talking about taking time off as an entrepreneur. So go ahead, Turla. You were saying something. You said like this is a perfect time, and then I said, you know what, this is a great episode for our podcast.
We should go back
So
actually. We should talk about your week.
okay, yeah,
Your week.
that's a
Yeah.
great.
Set the
Okay,
set the
great,
foundation there.
great idea. Okay, so I took it's funny. I was talking to my wife about it. This is probably the first time that we've had a couples getaway in almost 2 years. And granted, in fairness, Corona kind of happened, so like it probably wouldn't have been as long had that not been a scenario and we weren't thinking about not traveling and avoiding traveling. For a period of time, traveling was, expressly prohibited, so we couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do that. But it's funny because we had developed a sort of cadence as a family about taking time off, and that was something that we made time for, and it was really important. And we spent time together, and it was just like, even though of course inevitably things would creep in, we still at least made it a point to set aside time to do things. And it's been so long, I didn't really realize, and part of it is just time has
Mm-hmm.
been such a blur recently, and it feels that way as an entrepreneur in any case.
Yeah.
And what's funny is funnies. I feel like every time I say funny, I'm like, funny is just like my placeholder word for when I can't think of an appropriate adjective for something. But I had lunch with my mom a few weeks ago, and she was just asking me how things were going, and I just gave her, it's my mom, so I can be honest with my mom. I just gave her an honest assessment of how business was doing and that sort of thing. And she was just really empathetic, and she said, everybody tells you running your own business is going to be so great. Oh, you'll have so much freedom, you'll have so much control. And she's like, no, you don't. You have no freedom. There's no such thing as taking a vacation. Even when you take time off, people are still
Mm-hmm.
expecting on you for something, and if something goes wrong, you have to be there. You're responsible.
Yeah.
So she was just saying, running your own business is terrible. And it was funny to hear my mom say that, but it was an honest kind of take. They've been running their own business for years,
Oh wow.
very
Oh wow.
successfully. They run
Oh wow.
multiple successful businesses. Some of them are not doing as well as they wish, but the irony is, because they have multiple businesses, sometimes when one business is doing great, it can help lift the water for the other businesses, because then you
Yeah.
can reinvest into the other businesses. But still, it's a lot of responsibility, and taking time off is difficult. And a lot of times it's hard to justify that time. Like you were saying, you were telling me, Ron, go ahead and push those meetings that you
Yeah.
need to take.
Yeah.
I should, and I will.
Yeah.
I've
Wait.
tried to defer a
Yeah.
bunch of them.
Yeah. Unless you got, like brain surgery or someone's gonna die, then I totally understand. But
Yeah, absolutely. I
no one's
and
dying, then you're good.
yeah, it's true. There's nobody dying in my case.
Exactly. If you
No.
don't push any code, someone's gonna die. It's just a
Yeah.
quick thing here. It's funny that your go-to adjective is funny.
Mm.
Mine is annoying.
Annoying. Oh,
So, yeah.
yeah.
A little bit more pessimistic than yours, but
Yeah.
it gets the job done. It's my
Yeah.
like the situation is like annoying. I use that. That's
Yeah.
my go-to
No, I get
adjective
that.
here.
People comment down below. What's your go-to word
Yeah, exactly.
when you
Yeah.
can't think of a word? What's the first word that you say? And
Yeah.
then you replace it with a more appropriate adjective afterwards. So,
Yeah.
what about you,
Yeah.
Turlo? What's your experience?
I was gonna say, I was talking to my wife a couple of weeks ago, I think, about this topic as well. She just became like a manager this year.
Mm.
Really stressful for her because she's working in like a nursing environment, and you know, I describe her environment as like, hostile for me to be in, but it's like, a bunch of like patients and a lot of works with a lot of women as well that they
Mm.
have, their office drama, whatever. But
Oh yeah.
she's been like kind of stressed out and stuff, and she keeps like she'll do these like half days or take a day or something, but she's not really like taking a day off, and she's not
Mm.
really like like enjoying herself. She takes day off. She like ends up doing something that's not relaxing, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna deep clean the entire house, or go like,
Right.
no, just like I'm
Stay
trying to force
busy.
her to actually relax. Yeah,
Mm.
that's most of my time telling her, just like, just do nothing. I have to directly tell her that because she's just like me. That way it just keeps going, going, going.
Yeah.
One of the things I was telling her that I was going to tell you is that it's important to combine, like, put those days you're gonna take time, put them together. Don't break them out so much. You're gonna get so much value from like that, almost like that, like continuation of having 3 days or 4 days or an entire week of 7 days versus like
Hmm.
one day every other,
Yeah.
time of the month, because it's just gonna allow your brain to, you're gonna spend one day getting over like just stressing about work still. You're gonna spend the second day probably stressing about
Yeah.
half work and half the stuff that you really need to do now you have time. Like
Hmm.
now I should probably go to the eye doctor. My wife was like, we need to tag our cars, for example, on her day off. It's just like, it's fine. I can do
Yeah.
it later. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But then that third day, you can actually relax. You can actually, you got to give yourself time to get into like the actual relaxed
Crucial
period,
mode.
but
Yeah.
also at the same time you need to give yourself time to get out of the relaxing period, right? I think that's important to like,
Mm-hmm.
if you can prepare
Transition
yourself to go back to
important.
work, yeah, like now is the time, like maybe the Sunday before you go back to work, look at your email and stuff, just like not sit there and reply, but just know what's ahead of you, so on Monday is
Mm-hmm.
not like this, like impact of like, here's
Immediate.
everything you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I encourage people, take more time off in a row, like just
Mm-hmm.
do it and go somewhere too. Like don't stay in your house, don't
Absolutely.
stay
Mm-hmm.
in your house. Like there's, I try not to even like it. For me, it's like I have certain areas in my house that like my bedroom is like I only sleep in there. You'll never catch me just sitting down watching TV
Yeah.
or doing anything in that room. That's the room where I sleep. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to do that for your house too. Just go out your house, even if you're
Yeah.
just go anywhere, go for a drive, go to just do something outside your house. So just like encourage people to embrace the time
Out of
off
the
and
building.
respect it. Yeah, respect that
Mm-hmm.
moment to observe it.
Yeah.
The time off. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. That's really great advice. And I love what you said about getting out of the house, because that's common advice in anytime you're trying to solve a problem in product management and there's like a product or you need to do customer discovery. One of the mantras is get out of the building. You can't put yourself outside of the mindset that you're in the day to day if you're in the same environment.
Hmm.
A change in environment changes the context and it changes your typical thought patterns.
Yeah, yeah. It
Like
doesn't have
there's
to be like drastic either.
yeah,
Like the pandemic is making all of this worse and harder to
more
do,
difficult,
but
of course.
yeah, like even like before pandemic, I would be sitting in a random Starbucks in Tulsa. Like I've sat in each of them probably here in town,
Hmm.
but I used to go there at least 4 times a week, or just pick one and sit there and just try to not to be, you know, at my office at work or at home at a
Yeah.
computer. It's like I don't have to be tied to something like this. But
Hmm.
even like something as like just go to a park, or even like work from another family member's house.
Hmm.
Even if you're like, hey, I just need to go like write this email up or do this thing, like do it for someone else's house.
Hmm.
You don't do it from your own house. You're not tied to your desk. Once again,
Hmm.
unless you're my wife and she's a nurse, she can't really work from home. And
Right. Yeah.
things like that. But
Depends on the
not
situation.
everyone's that way though. There's something that you can do that allow you to break up your time in that way.
Monotony.
But yeah,
Hmm.
like at the house, or even if you're like, like when she comes home and she's just like I feel like I'm talking to my wife a lot now, but she like, she comes home, she's just like, she loves just staying her scrubs, and because they're just very comfortable. I'm like, she got your scrubs, just to get out of them,
Yeah.
because once again, it's like you gotta separate, the work from everything else as much as
Yeah.
possible. Don't try to
It's
blend them
true.
in, but you got your house, do
Yeah.
stuff.
It's true. Have you heard of Tim Ferriss and his thoughts on like the bed and how you should treat your bed and what
I
you
have
said about your
not.
bed? No.
I have not.
It's like
I've heard this, like this idea I have about the bed came from something somewhere else. I
hmm.
just happened to do it when I heard it. I was like, oh, I've
Yeah.
always been this way. Even as a kid,
Mm.
I was the same way. I would never like be in my room unless I was like sleeping, because
Hmm.
I don't like sleep, so I have to try to convince myself to sleep. It's
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
ways.
No, it's good, and you're absolutely right about that. What happens is, our brains are very pattern seeking, and they're pattern forming. If you develop a pattern where every time you get in bed, all you do is sleep, The Tim Ferriss thing is like beds are only for sleep and sex. That's it.
Hmm.
He uses different words, but right. He's right, because what you do is your brain creates patterns and associations. If you're staying in your bed and you're watching TV, or you're working in your bed, what you do is you create those mental associations with
Hmm.
what you're doing in your bed. And if you're not sleeping, then it makes it harder to fall asleep, because
Yeah.
sometimes I'm in my bed and I'm reading, sometimes I'm in my bed and I'm working. So your brain doesn't know what should I be, what mode and what
Yeah.
zone should I be in. If you're working in your bed, then your brain, it's harder to disconnect your brain from work when you're trying to sleep. Your brain will start like
Exactly.
thinking about the patterns that you developed as you were using it in that situation and in that context.
Yeah.
Just
Even
because
like
you know that
comfort,
works.
basic comfort, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you only lay down on your back when you're in your bed, your
Mm,
body will, you know,
mm,
you'll recognize that when you lay down after a long day or
yeah.
something, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
like, man, like, yeah, this is different for
You'll
sure.
create
So,
that pattern. Yeah. I'm
yeah.
sure it makes it easier to take naps too if you need to take a nap. Just
Yeah, it does,
you
man.
go
Take
crash.
breaks. Take
Yeah.
breaks. Take time off. Plan time. Do stuff. Take
Yeah.
days.
Mm,
I think it's important to recommend as well for a lot of people to take days, like in the middle of the week,
mm,
like especially if you have a spouse or a kid by
mm,
yourself. Don't
mm,
try to like always plan stuff around other people.
mm,
I'm an introvert. I would naturally do that, but
mm,
tell people all the time, like, hey, like, my friend Brian, he lives in Arkansas. He was gonna go see his family when he gets like, dude, like, just hang at home.
mm,
Like, you're
mm,
gonna be out for a couple of days. Like, when last time you done that? And he was like, never. I always like go see family, or that's when I have
mm.
time. It's like, we need
Yeah.
to spend some time just being
With
you.
our own
Just do,
thoughts.
yeah, exactly. Because
Mm,
eat what you want to eat. You don't have to like compromise on anything. That's what I tell people. There's no
mm.
compromises when you're by yourself.
That's true. That's good. Well,
Like I
there
want to
can
go.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, like tomorrow, I was thinking about driving to Oklahoma City tomorrow because like I
Mm,
was talking to my therapist and she was like, you should do something that you haven't done in a while. Because I was telling her
mm.
I'm just like kind of like in this weird place where I'm a little bored, but I'm also like,
Bored out
yeah,
versus
like the
burned
bored
out.
out thing we talked about. Yeah, I'm just like kind of in this weird space, but I'm also like
Mm,
trying to like just get comfortable, I guess you could say,
mm,
especially with the pandemic and stuff. She's like, do something you used to do a lot or something you haven't done in a long time because I've been doing things like playing basketball and stuff, but it
mm.
become where I'm doing it so much that it's like it's too routine now. It's
Yeah.
not like something that's like I'm excited to play basketball or I'm
Mm,
excited to ride my
mm.
bike. It's like no, you do this like 3 times
Interesting.
a
Yeah.
week. It's like not
Yeah.
even it doesn't feel like a hobby. It feels like something you're just doing because you're
It's a
just
chore.
bored. Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Right.
Hmm.
So she's like, and I was talking to her, like, I used to go to the movies a lot. I used to go, I remember one year I watched every movie that came out in theater. Like, don't recommend that a lot
Wow.
of boring stuff, but I just like, I really love,
I
I watch even like the kid movie. I
did it
watch
so you don't
every
have
single movie. Like
to.
every single movie. It was so fun watching
Mm.
stuff like the Oscars because I knew every movie, right? But it was such
Oh
a
wow.
an
Mm.
experience where like the movie buff in me like really likes to like always on IMDb like looking at the movies coming up and stuff like that. But it's been like like a year or 2 years since I've been in movies because of the pandemic. So I was like,
Hmm.
man, maybe I should drive to Oklahoma City, which is like 2 hours from here, go watch a movie, get some food, and drive home. Like
Hmm.
that should be a day that I'm gonna have like for my as a way to kind of once again like break up, but also take a break. I can't work, I can't like I'm not gonna be in the house. I'm not even gonna be in the same city. It's really gonna give
Hmm.
me that break that I need. But
Yeah. Hmm. That's a
see,
great idea.
yeah, you don't have to like always like if I was doing that, like for example, like okay, it's like man, I got time tomorrow, but maybe I'll wait till Saturday. What my wife is home. Now we'll go together. Now we're probably compromising on movies because I literally don't care what we're watching. Now
Mm.
I'm probably gonna go eat, because I basically like my diet is like pescatarian basically. It's like
Mm.
fish and Asian food. That's all I eat.
Mm.
So I'm by myself.
Interesting.
That's all I'm gonna eat, like
Hmm.
ever. It's not
Hmm.
even a choice. So it's like I'm just
It's
gonna
your
go eat some
go-to.
Asian food. Yeah, I'm probably gonna eat some pho or something and just like do my thing, right? But there's no
Hmm.
compromises. It's just like it's
Mm.
just something you just have to do for yourself to kind of like
Yeah.
just something you love. Don't make compromises. Don't like, all
Yeah.
right, have a kid with you, now you're changing up your whole plan. It's like, don't do that. Just screw your kid. Just take that day off. Like seriously,
Hmm.
take that day off. Take it
Yeah.
off. You don't have to include them. For
Yeah.
yourself. Like,
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
so
The other
selfish.
thing too, yeah, well, it's important because the truth is you don't know what you like if you don't get a chance to express those things, Like you were saying,
Exactly.
you don't have to compromise, you don't have to make concessions. I think it's important for us to understand who and what we are,
Yeah.
What are the things that
Eh,
we like? What are the things that are important to us? Unless you have an
exactly.
opportunity to actually do those things, do you really know?
Yeah. At a fundamental level too, there's this thing that like, especially when you're in a relationship with like a wife or husband or girlfriend or
Mm-hmm.
boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
there's periods where like you're helping each other, right? Where it's like, maybe your wife is going through a stressful thing,
Absolutely.
so you're giving more to help her out, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, there's this thing where it's like you got to make sure that like your glass is full before you pour some in her cup. You can't
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
your cup's empty. You can't help her. Now you're
Yeah.
both kind of stuck in this place. So that's why that
Mm-hmm.
recovery period is like such encouragement. It's like
Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
come back like, all right, saw a movie, ate some great food, great. Now let's
Yeah,
like, if my wife had a bad day or something, I can spend more time,
you can be
like
there for
just
her.
being there more for her on the weekend instead of me trying to also like pick myself up and pick
Yeah,
her up at the
absolutely.
same time, like pick up a 2 year old. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just
Mm-hmm.
that balance. It's like, well, it's not easier. You got to think about like make sure you're in a good place and you can help others. So
Yeah.
it's very hard as an entrepreneur because I don't know about you, but I don't think no one truly understands what I do for a living.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I think you're
Except for
probably the
other
only
people.
person.
Yeah,
I think
except for other
everyone.
people in the field. Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah,
true.
it's like something about that. Like it's just like it's not helpful at times, right?
Yeah.
It's not helpful at times because they don't fully understand like the type of problems you have there. Now, like it's not like an easy fix, or this takes time, or this takes a certain different kind of sacrifice, or something. But yeah.
Yeah, what you were saying about um, being the glass half
Hmm.
full. I'm trying to look this up, but I remember reading this quote. I want to find out who it was that said this, but she said, "Self care is about giving the world the best of you rather than what's left of you." And I
Oh, that's a
love
good way to
that
put it. Yeah.
because, and it's exactly what you're saying. If you take time out for self care and being selfish, taking care of yourself for a period of time, it helps you recover so that you can be at your best. And
Yeah.
exactly like what you were saying, the glass half empty, if you're depleted partially, you can't really be there for your wife or your partner
Yeah.
or
Or your
whoever
business.
or your business in the way that you need to be because
Yeah.
you're running on fumes,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Again, you
personal.
can't give great customer
Absolutely.
service. You can't give great demos.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
like
you're
you
right.
can't you can't do anything well.
Yeah.
So try to I always keep to the back of my head like all the time. It's like, okay, how am I doing before I try to do something? Do I need to take a break or something?
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a
Yeah.
while, like every 3 months or so, I do take a trip where like, like the last one I went to Austin for like
Mm-hmm.
a couple of days. I just flew to Austin, picked a hotel, like it just basically ate the same thing every day, and because it's part of it's like escaping from the routine of which
Mm-hmm.
is life, right? It's like, okay, there's no routine here, no decision fatigue. This is the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of decision fatigue.
Right.
This is literally like, I remember, this the
Mm-hmm.
second day I got there in Austin, walked out of my hotel with my camera, my Nikon. I was like, just walked into a direction. I was like, I don't care where I go, where I end up. I'm back at the hotel or whatever. But the whole point of this is to just like not really try to make any decisions, but just to like just let
Go
the
with the
shoulders
flow.
loose. Yeah, just actually just get into a flow and a rhythm. And then during that time period, that's where I came back from there and decided to start working on Visitor Kit because I was refreshed after all that stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
was like processing everything that happened before that, but it gave me
Mm-hmm.
that space to just be clear and be like, what things are really important to you, and allowed me to write things down on a more higher level versus like very tactical, like you need to do this. Like, no, just think about like what's the next 6 months look like? What's the next 9 months look
Mm.
like versus like always focusing on that day or that week or. So get ahead a little bit, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
gotta give yourself space to do that. You can't
Yeah.
cram
Mm-hmm.
busyness and stress with new ideas and new projects because
Yeah, absolutely. Different frames of mind, different mindset.
you gotta
It's
know what you
like,
need. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's this idea of slowing down to speed up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and it's interesting that happens exactly the same whenever you're training in fitness. I mean, at least I can, like, analogously, in my
Mm-hmm.
experience, inevitably you'll reach a plateau, right? And what happens is your body just gets adapted to the training and the program that you're following. It's interesting you were saying bored out. I was thinking about it, and I think that's where I'm at kind of with my fitness, with my current
Mm.
fitness program.
Interesting.
I've just been
Yeah.
doing the same thing, and like this past week, even though I'm taking time off, I guess I'm also kind of taking time off from working out too.
Yeah. There you go.
But
Just change
it's
it
a,
all up. Yeah.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I haven't been enjoying the break, but at the same time, I really miss working out. I like doing things with my body, moving my body, doing something. And I think where I'm at is I just need to change. I need to revisit my fitness program. I need to
Mhm.
reprogram. And it's something that I do periodically anyway. I would say like every 8 weeks or so. And I guess it's been about 8 weeks or more. I don't know. Maybe
Oh
it's been
wow.
longer
Yeah.
since I've reprogrammed. I just need to do something else to keep it interesting. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you're not excited to play basketball anymore because it's the same thing. But what if you did, instead of playing basketball, you started doing drills, and like, oh, like I'm really excited
Yeah.
about doing drills. I don't know, whatever. It's
Yeah.
different for
Exactly.
everybody.
Yeah. You just
So
change it up. Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. You just gotta be aware of that. I think that's the hard part about that is like when you like start doing your hobby as a job, that's where
mm,
it becomes really bad. I
mm-hmm,
think it feels like burnout, but it's actually like not burnout, right? You're
mm-hmm,
just like, I'm kind of tired of doing the same stuff again. Like I'm
mm-hmm,
building a
mm-hmm,
website, I'm writing
mm-hmm,
CSS. It's like this isn't exciting. Like, or even sometimes you're even doing stuff like that. You're not even solving a problem. It's just routine stuff. Like you just have to
yeah,
do this just to do it. It's like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
this is an every time, every case thing. So it's kind of harder with that. I'm trying to get better at that part of how to do that
mm-hmm,
from a job standpoint of like, is there a way to like introduce, how do you make that like 8 week, like you talk about your workout, how do you make that like change but not have it affect your entire business? Where it's
yeah,
like,
mm-hmm,
but try to, keep yourself going and
mm-hmm,
motivated. But
mm-hmm. That's a good question. You know, I think it's going to be different for everybody.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's not even like motive. It's not even like an extra push, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, just don't be bored.
Yeah.
Like, just like get it, like stay in the correct like like flow, right? Just stay in a certain area. Don't get like too excited. And don't get too slow, but just don't
Mm-hmm.
overwork yourself. Don't get the burnout, but just
Mm-hmm.
stay in this like routine area.
Mm-hmm.
It's ideal.
That's a great thing that you just said. Actually, I remember watching a YouTube video just the other day. I forget who it was. I wish I could attribute it to the author. Maybe we'll find it and we'll put the link in the description.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the author was talking about the same exact idea. How if you are constantly working at your best, it's naturally depleting. It naturally depletes what you can give the next day because you're like so in the zone, you're focused, and you're just you may be in one of those moments where you're going to work until 4 in the morning. You're just like, I
Hmm.
got this. And what happens is there's a crash that comes after. And what he learned is to stop, like create. It's kind of like what you were saying about taking breaks. So even though he may be in the zone, what he'll do is he'll take up what's left of that energy and create a plan for tomorrow. And then he will intentionally stop.
Mm, that's a good idea.
Because what happens is what you do is you never get to the point where you end up crashing. You end where you're still at a high and you're excited. What will happen is
Yeah,
inevitably the next day you wake up, you're already excited because you forced yourself to stop. You created a cliffhanger
that's a
for
good
yourself.
idea.
And
Yeah.
what you'll do is the next day you'll pick up on that flow because you intentionally create that cutoff. So I love that idea, and I think that's what I need to try myself as well.
Yeah, it's going through on the idea of like using like time blocks, right? I
Yeah,
was
time
reading a lot
blocking.
about that. About yeah, it's like maybe I should try that. I do a lot of time tracking, but I thought about doing the
Mm,
opposite of like doing time blocking,
yeah.
where it's like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like you're gonna spend 2 hours on this, and that's it. So just
Hmm.
that's all you're gonna do. You
Hmm.
have 3 hours in here of just whatever,
Yeah.
type of thing and
You know
stuff. So
what's relevant and directly related to that is I remember reading this word of advice, and I have it at the top of my to-do list in Trello, and that is don't prioritize your schedule, schedule your priorities. And it's such a simple change, but I think it's important. What you do then is exactly that. It's time blocking.
mhm,
I need to spend some time doing this. You book that time in your calendar as a thing that you have to do. And then
mhm,
no matter what else happens, you've blocked out time to do that activity, and you have to do it within that
mhm.
time span. I mean, the thing is you have to hold yourself accountable to that,
Yeah,
right? Just
yeah, accountability.
because you
Yeah,
put it on
yeah,
your
for
calendar
sure.
doesn't mean you're going to follow through,
Hmm.
but you should, and develop the discipline in doing that. And I think it's really helpful. It's like you were saying, time blocking basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It's definitely hard. It's hard
Yeah,
to. It's not hard to set up. It's just hard to maintain. It's
it's
very
true.
difficult.
It's
Very
true.
difficult. Because sometimes you're just like not in the mood to do something, but
Hmm.
you can
It's
just
true.
change it, right? Just like it's like, you know what? Can I program? Like, do you want to program? I was like, no,
Mm.
I want to watch that TV show I started last night. I want
Yeah,
to finish that.
right.
Like, why
Speaking
not?
of
Right? I can
cliffhangers.
always do this afterwards. I can always do this afterwards. That's
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, what I think what you and I should do in this situation is I've definitely had those moments too, 100%. Um, is use that watching that episode as a reward for finishing that task.
I think I always like challenge myself though sometimes
Mm.
with that. I guess there's like devil's advocate where I'm like, I do need a break though.
Of course, of
It's
course.
the same time where it's like I
Hmm.
do need a break. I think I need to
Hmm.
just find because I have this thing where like I used to work really well like at night. That was my thing.
Hmm.
Like right after college, of course.
Hmm. You
My prime
develop
time
it.
was between like five p.m. and like 10 p.m. That
Hmm.
was my time to get the most done on side projects. That's what I did,
Hmm.
right? It changed, from like 5 a.m. to about noonish. It changed in that period of time. I think probably because of job change, like
Hmm.
your job just gets more stressful, so you come home and you're just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
But he's like, all right,
Hmm.
this thing. I heard this quote from somebody. They were like, like I give the best of myself before I go to work and give the rest to somebody
Hmm.
else. It's kind of like that idea. But now, like being self-employed, I'm just like all over the place. I have
Hmm.
no like sweet zone that's like, what's the ideal time for me to get stuff done in?
Hmm. Whenever
I
you
have no
have
idea.
time.
Yeah, it's like literally whenever I feel like it,
Mm.
and which is not good because sometime it never comes that whole day, right?
Yeah.
You're just
Hmm.
like, oh, now is the next day. You did nothing yesterday, or
Hmm.
unless there's like, I've been trying to give myself deadlines to help with that process, but I'm trying
Hmm.
to figure out like what is that sweet time, sweet
Hmm.
area of hours in which
Hmm.
like there's a window for me to like use that as a like I'm gonna sit down, get some stuff done. I know I'm gonna have this time every day
Hmm.
and be effective at that. So.
Hmm. I remember reading about, I wish I could find it. Maybe I'll look for it. Maybe another thing that we'll put in the description. But I remember reading about finding how to find that sweet spot. And what you can do is you can just
Mm.
track it over time. Let's say you you're in the zone and you're in a moment where you're really kind of crushing it. Make note of what time that was. And the next time you feel
Mm.
that way, make note of what time that was. And then you can kind of find, maybe it's somewhere between 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's
That's a
like
good
right after
idea.
you have lunch and like we warm up. I don't know, maybe it's different or maybe it isn't.
Yeah. I just realized I have this app on my computer called Rescue Time.
Oh yeah,
I should look at that. Rescue Time is an app for um,
it
the
tracks.
Mac. I,
I think it's
what's
a
it
Mac
called?
app. Hmm.
Rescue Time?
Yeah, there's a rescue time app.
Oh, yeah, I'm spelling Rescue. Yeah, Rescue Time is a great little app. That what it does, it tracks like what apps you have open and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So oh, you spent this much time,
on Facebook.
on this website too, which is super helpful. So you spent this much time on Twitter.com, or you spent this much time in your email, or playing
Hmm.
video games or something, or
Hmm.
it's super cool. I haven't like logged in here in a while. I mean, probably log in there just to see like what that looks like.
How
I'd
do
be
you
curious to
spend
see
your time?
like what areas of time I'm spending like in, my text editor, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would be
Mm-hmm.
ideal. It's like, okay, what time am I
Yeah.
spending in here? Because that's going to be the number one application I could think of that'd be most quantifiable too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it tracks
Yeah.
the apps that you're using too. Like how
It
many.
does. It does. It tracks a lot. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty helpful. Interesting. I need
There
to
you go.
mess around with that some more. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I've just set you down another rabbit hole.
Oh, I know. I think that rabbit hole is a constant one. I go
Mm.
down a lot. The quantify self, I call it a
Yeah.
rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
rabbit hole I live in.
You live in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great,
Yeah.
especially if you look at the data and you make decisions around it. You actually make a data-driven decision. It's like, what do I think I do versus what do I actually do? It's like, well, I feel like I spend a lot of time doing this, but you look at the data objectively.
But the thing about the quantify self stuff, kind of going back a little bit to the taking a break is I want to. My dream of this topic is that I'm like super like personally passionate about for myself. It's like applying some of the like programmings of things that I've learned to like my behaviors and stuff like that.
Mm.
I like, for example, I'd love to be a case where it's like, if I check a bunch of data based on like, you've worked out these days, you play basketball this day, you have did some programming this day. Currently, the weather is this degrees. Now is the ideal time to play basketball,
Mm.
right? Like something that kind of like can nudge me, right? Or like, hey, you should totally like start working right now or in this time period because you got 8 hours of sleep,
Mm.
you just ate, you're good to go, right? You got a new
Yeah.
playlist
Mm.
up, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is your zone. You haven't played the Hamilton soundtrack on repeat in months. Here you go. Like, this is your time period. You know what I mean? To like,
Mhm.
apply a little bit, apply a little of that back as that like something that like you would, intentionally you would try to do naturally, but you just don't. You're not getting those nudges. Some kind of like nudge, just like, hey, think about this right now, or think about like this movie just came out. You should go to the movies right now. Take that break. Like a little nudges that'll kind of help that same direction. Get that feedback.
There's a startup opportunity right there, man.
Oh man, yeah. I always like. I never consider doing that because of privacy. I'd never consider it.
Yeah.
Because
It would have to be all built in and isolated. Like it would have to be
it's
on
like
device.
I need to know where you're sleeping and where you're at all times.
Yep.
Okay with that? And I'm gonna process it
and what you're eating, what you're doing, how you're spending your time.
And I'm not doing any of this on device, by the way.
Yeah,
it's going to a
right.
server, like 100%. So I that's why I always like part of me is like I don't even want to run that business because I think everyone's so different. Everyone's so different. I don't think I can make something for you that's gonna like because like we have different hobbies, right? I have to account for your hobbies now. Like it's never gonna tell you to go lift weights because I don't lift weights.
Yeah.
It's never gonna tell you to do that.
Go pick up something heavy.
Yeah, it's gonna constantly remind you to eat like sushi because you didn't sushi in a while. Like it's gonna constantly remind you in these ways, or watch it'll give you some really good TV recommendations, but that's about it. It's not gonna be good for you. So maybe an open source framework that you can apply your own data sets to. Sure, I think that's different. But in terms of a product, I think that's a terrible idea.
You think so?
For me to build. Someone else want to build it, go for it. Go for it. But yes.
Yeah.
That idea is free.
Yeah. Some people are really into that kind of stuff and some people are not. To your point about privacy, some people are just so cautious about it. And I think about, I'm going to go on a little bit of a privacy tangent, but and then we'll circle back to our main topic. But, with the smart assistants that everybody has now, whether it's an Alexa or the Siri or Google Home, whatever it is, they're all listening and they're always on all the time.
Yeah.
And we choose for that. Most of us, some of us don't, some people don't. But the truth is we're constantly teaching all of these smart assistants everything we say, everything that they hear,
I think people really understand like they're always listening.
Always, yeah.
For something to understand, like hey Alexa, they have to be already listening for hey Alexa. There's not like I heard it, now turn the mic on. No. No, you
No,
have
I
to
had to mute it
constantly
so that I
be
could hear
listening.
what.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a streaming of a mic, I would assume. I don't know exactly how it works. I'm assuming they just like constantly, like listening to a mic, but not recording
Mm,
that because that would just
right.
be storage hell. But
Yeah. You
they
would
probably
be
listen into a
so.
server. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. Yeah.
Oh
I'm
gosh.
pretty sure it's in their terms. Like they will occasionally store recordings of your voice,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so that they
yeah.
could
I think
better
Apple
listen
got
to
in
you.
trouble for that because like they had humans listening to Siri
Mm-hmm.
voices,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, for they
Yeah.
do that because you got to improve the quality, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makes sense because
Customer improvement,
everyone's
customer
different,
development.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Different voices, different environments,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. True.
it's products.
That's a whole world. Yeah, that's a whole world. Yeah. Well, anyway, going back to the main topic, I liked your advice and what you said.
Take breaks.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's important for sure. The truth is, you don't, if you are constantly stuck in the same flow and what you're doing day in and day out, you get burned out and bored out.
Mhm.
Everything starts to feel routine and monotonous, and you're not excited about it. You need to find something to bring that life and that spark back into what you're doing. That being said, you're not always going to feel like it. There are going to be days where you have to force yourself to do it. And there's
Yeah,
this idea that
yeah.
when the action is what brings the inspiration, not the other way around. A lot of people
Yeah.
think they have to be inspired first, but what happens is if you go out, you're going out for a walk, you start to feel inspired to take a jog. Maybe not
No,
everybody, but
yeah,
but
a perfect example of this. I've been working with a couple of clients and like,
mm,
yeah, their deadlines. I get their stuff done because there's a deadline.
mm,
Like I don't even the deadline's the one that's like motivated me more than
mm,
they didn't give me a deadline. I don't think they would ever get the work, like honestly,
mm,
because I
mm.
just wouldn't do
Do it
it.
whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, which will be like after visitor gets stuff done, right?
Yeah.
Or the day before my bills are due, right? Those are
Right.
another deadline, but it's
I
literally
need to
going to
get
be
paid.
deadline driven. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's deadline driven, right? I think that's important. It's one of the things where it's like it's easy. Yeah, you're saying you have to like add those like almost like these like hard stop points, these
Mhm.
hard
Mhm.
things, and you have to justify to yourself and the
Mhm.
reason why you have that there. But
Mhm.
yeah, but like do that thing and take a break afterwards. It's super
Mhm.
important. Like
Yeah.
get to your big deadline, take a break.
Yeah. It's
Good
true.
time
Have you heard of the Pomodoro technique?
off.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
similar
like that
idea.
same. Hmm.
You basically block out that time, 25 minutes I'm going to be productive, and then 5 minutes I have to take a break. And then you build that into your routine. I mean, like that becomes your metronome to what you're
Yeah,
doing.
exactly. Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
like a
so
work
it's like
metronome.
30 minutes, 10-minute break, then 30 minutes or whatever your
Yeah,
intervals are.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it kind of changes based on I have to say based on your work for sure. Because I try a little bit for programming and I found it to be very distracting because
Yeah,
there's not
just take
necessarily
breaks.
you don't really have like a natural stop points in programming ever. You just stop.
Yeah.
It's just like you finally just like, all right, I guess I'll remember. This is enough for me to come back and figure out what I did later.
Yeah.
That's when you stop.
Well,
When
that's
you
what
feel
comments
safe
are
for
for.
tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like when you feel safe to stop.
Yeah.
That's kind of feel like that. I feel like you're juggling. It's like, all right, it's a good time to stop and put this down now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. And one thing too that I think is important to keep in mind, especially around breaks and anything mental like programming, is the brain needs rest just like anything else. I remember talking to somebody about this and I said, can you imagine like basketball, for example? Could you imagine playing basketball just for 4 hours nonstop, constantly without taking any kind of break? No, that's crazy. Like you'd have to take breaks. You're not going to be constantly running.
Right.
But that's what we expect our brains to do constantly.
Mhm.
People will sit down and I'm just gonna study for 4 hours straight without taking a break, or I'm just gonna
Yeah.
program for 4 hours nonstop. You have to take breaks, just like you would with a physical activity. The brain is like that too. It needs a
Yeah.
break.
It does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Sometimes
It
it
also
moves
needs to,
stitches.
just like, like any other thing like basketball, you also have to like warm it up too.
Yeah, it's true. You
The same.
can't just jump straight into the thing.
Hmm.
But it's one kind of to follow that train of thought. One thing that I've heard is if you have a long to-do list, what you should do first is swallow the toad. Have you heard that expression?
Hmm.
or eat the
Mhm.
frog or whatever,
Yeah, like do like
and
the hardest thing.
do the hardest thing first. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you should warm up, just like going back to fitness or lifting, weightlifting as an example, because I can
Right,
relate to
right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my biggest advice I give like new programmers because they always like go for like the easiest stuff first.
Mm,
Just like you haven't done the hardest thing yet. You're gonna fail. Like straight up. You're gonna be refactoring before you're even done.
mm,
Like do the
mm.
hard thing first. Like get that thing
Yeah.
wrong a couple times,
Hmm.
then
And
you
then
can go
build
back and
everything else
polish it.
around it.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Yeah. 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 I was doing that with a client recently because they were doing like this project
Mm,
and I was like, how about this? How about you just like we'll do a couple of hours here
mm,
and I'll just like just see how far I get and then we'll come back and give you a real estimate.
hmm.
Because yeah, if I just like I can estimate around all the little tiny stuff, but
Mm,
this one thing that's like the core of the thing, like I
hmm.
let's just like bang your head against the wall a little bit here. Do that first.
Yeah.
Figured it out, great. Now the rest of it falls in line. Project
Hmm.
goes smooth.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely the hardest thing
True.
first.
It's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I like how you apply it to solving a specific programming problem. Whenever I said it, I was thinking more of tasks in terms of tasks that you have to do. And maybe that
Oh,
first task is
yeah. No, it's
doing a
my yeah.
programming thing, but
I do it.
it could be making a phone call. You
I
could.
do it with everything. Yeah, like I'm starting this new project. Help with my board out. I'll probably talk about it later, but it's a project I'm gonna. It's a live programming thing I'm gonna be doing. I'm gonna
Hmm,
be doing a game I'm gonna be building.
interesting.
Um, I'm gonna like do it all live.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
The whole thing
Are
live.
you doing it
So
as part of a competition or something, or just
no,
like for
just
fun?
like really random and like the goal is to like this
Hmm,
game. I don't care if it's successful. The goal is to just share. I just need to like kind of solve an itch and
hmm,
try to just kind of board out a little bit by like doing some programming
hmm,
on a game. But part of this is like I was writing down some of the things I want to do. It's like the first thing I need to do. I'm building a okay. I'm gonna tell about the game. It's a basically it's not nothing super crazy innovative.
hmm,
It's gonna be a blackjack game
hmm,
with open multiplayer real time tables. People can like so I'm playing online blackjack. All of a sudden you can play and come join next to me in real time. We can play
hmm,
against it like a normal blackjack table
hmm,
would.
hmm,
That's the game. So part
hmm.
of this is like before you do anything, I need to build blackjack in programming language.
Right.
Like before I even like consider like is this even going to be a
The
phone
multiplayer
game or
aspects. Yeah.
yeah, is it even possible?
Hmm.
Like yeah, like can I like do can I fully program the logic here for blackjack?
Hmm.
Then everything else just basically like okay, now take this off and now add multiplayer to it. Or now you can
Hmm.
refactor around this idea that works, but it's going to help me understand that. Like,
Hmm.
do I have to put blackjack on the server, for example, or can I put it client side, right?
Hmm.
Like, it might be easier if I just like how video games work, how the game is actually played in the cloud and you just send your inputs to,
Hmm.
they don't send everybody's commands to your computer, right?
Right.
You send
Hmm.
it's for blackjack games, like what would you do in that situation? I can see both of those working depending on
Hmm.
like, but it's also turn by turn blackjack, so it's
Yeah.
not like a
Hmm.
real time, like card game. So yeah, so that's what I did. Like, all right, do the hardest thing first, because if this sucks, I'm just gonna build a different card game. Like like I'm not even gonna sweat about it, like, or I'm not gonna make it multiplayer, but
Hmm.
that's gonna solve that hardest thing first. It's gonna make the rest of it easy. But once I solve that hard thing, I have it like in my plan to like, all right, do this hard thing, take a break.
Hmm.
Now use that time to think about all of the things you want to add, all of the type of like features and stuff, or figure out like I thought about making it a website game or making it a mobile game. Don't think about that yet.
Hmm.
Do that in the spot after you've like kind of have that empty space to think about like what you understand now about building a blackjack game.
Hmm.
Like what's going to be the easiest approach here. So yeah,
Yeah.
perfect example. Like just do the hardest thing first, because
Hmm.
I don't know, I never built blackjack before.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, if you can't do the hardest thing, it doesn't matter that you can do the easy things.
Exactly right. Now it's like my version of blackjack because I changed the rules. Now you can't split cards because I'm not programming that crap. You know what I mean? Like that could be one of the things that changes. Now the game changes, but it helps with scope creep later, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like this is the biggest part of the scope is this. Now it's just a matter of like tacking on like add-ons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, is it multiplayer or is it, or is it just a bunch of AI players, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
things like that. So
You're playing
different thing
against the
for,
computer.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a project I want to work on to help face my board out. But
Change your pace, do something else, stretch your
yeah,
brain, test your skills. Yeah, that's cool. That's
yeah.
cool. Side projects are important to pick up every now and then
Oh
because they really
gosh, yeah.
help you. I mean, we've talked about this before,
Yeah, like
but
I always share a blog post I've written about this. I wrote this blog post when I was bored at my last job,
mm,
actually. I remember talking to my boss about it. It was really funny talking to her
mm,
about this because I was
what'd you
like,
say?
yeah. She thought it was like, well, it benefited her,
Mm,
right? Because what I talk about was like, I learned everything about my job from side projects. I learned nothing on the job. It basically was the story. It's like programming languages, new technologies. I learned all of that side project, and when I go to work, I just make very, very calculated, decisions based on
mm,
side projects.
mm,
Like, yeah,
mm-hmm,
we could totally build that, no problem.
mm-hmm.
Like it's definitely
Now you
possible.
know.
I've literally built it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like it benefits, that environment as well. But it's
Mm,
important that a lot of people assume that you're gonna learn that stuff on the job.
mm-hmm.
I can tell you, it's the worst time to learn that stuff.
Yeah, because
It's
you know.
only valuable in that situation is when you're learning something as a team, and it
Mm,
has to be like a team thing. I think, like,
right.
for example, if you're learning AWS, do it as a team. It's fun.
Mm,
It's a lot
mm-hmm.
easier,
Yeah.
something big or machine learning as a team,
Mm-hmm.
source code management as a team, because
Mm,
it's completely different as a single person, but anything else, like, create a side project, just
mm-hmm.
build a thing, My
Yeah.
thing I do in every programming language for the first time is an RSS reader if I can, because
Really? Why an RSS reader?
that was the first thing I built in JavaScript. And I was the first. I just did the same thing. I basically
Mm,
started a project. I learned
figure it out.
JavaScript to build this thing, to build
Mm,
an RSS reader,
mm.
and then JavaScript wasn't the best language. This just wasn't Node. This was like
Mm.
jQuery, right?
Oh wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, that was like very entry level, like first programming language thing in high school, and I was like, this is not ideal. And I started doing some research, and I was like, I'm gonna learn a server side language. So I did it in PHP, and that
Mm,
became like just build an RSS reader.
mhm,
Then I learned Golang. Let's build an RSS reader, right?
mm.
It's just like that's been like my go-to thing. The only thing I didn't do it in was Unity, which doesn't make any sense at all. But
Yeah.
I did parse XML first, so
Mm.
that's basically the same thing.
You could build a Unity thing where you
But Unity
travel through
does, yeah,
travel
Unity
through an RSS.
uses a lot of XML, uses a
Mm.
ton of XML. So for
Really? Mm,
configuration stuff and things like that, like
mm,
how would you configure like game levels and stuff? Well,
mm,
XML is a great language for that.
mm, mhm, mhm.
Did
That
parse
makes sense.
XML, but didn't pull in RSS feeds.
You could do something. I think that's interesting. I mean, I don't know how practical it would be, but maybe it would
You
be
could.
cool. Maybe it could be cool.
You
Yeah.
totally could. You totally could if you want. I didn't need to do that. It wasn't the
Mhm.
point. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said about side projects, though. I think that's true because the truth is, if you're learning something on the job for the first time, you're expected to do something, you're asked to do something, and you've never done it before. Now you actively have to learn, and you can't give an estimate on something you don't even know about. It's exactly like what we were talking about before with the cosine paradox. When you're expected as a developer to give an estimate on something, and you may not know. It's like, I've never been anywhere near this island. I have no clue. But I've seen islands before, and based on other islands I know, it's this big or this wide. But this is a completely different island with a different coastline, different
Yeah, there's a
maybe.
volcano on it. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Who knows what? So
Yeah.
if you could send out a scout or some sort of probe or something where you can, or maybe a person who goes in ahead of time that does the investigation with programming, that would be a Spike project,
Mhm.
but that gives you additional information. And if you've done a side project like what you were saying, you already know, like you said, I've done it before, I know exactly what
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah. Yeah. For side projects, too, it's like you don't have to finish them, complete them. You don't have to name them.
Mm,
I have a lot of weird projects. And another great example of this recently, I was talking with a potential client. They were needing help with like an application for the iPhone. They're
Mm,
wanting to help it, like a health app thing. And I was
mm,
like, okay, well, here's this thing I created. It's called Untitled Health App.
mm,
It's in React Native. It uses
mm,
Connects to HealthKit, and here's all the stuff you're basically gonna build.
mm,
It's like here's a project that's not finished, not completed, and
mm,
super old, but like based on this, it's difficult. It's
mm,
challenging. I could
mm,
recommend that it's not going to be an easy thing, but if it's possible though in
mm,
React Native, you know what I
mhm,
mean? But that
mm,
was a perfect example of like if I knew React Native and you were
mm,
asking me to do it HealthKit, I would have been like, oh, I know these two things separately, but
mm.
that estimate would be really off. I feel like it
Yeah.
would lowball it a lot because you would understand like the health API is nothing like none of the other iPhone APIs. It's
Mm,
not a lot of examples, and because it's also like not a lot of example data, I should say, as
mm,
well,
mm.
makes it very hard.
Interesting. That would make sense. That would make sense, though.
A lot of stuff like that.
Hmm.
I always pulling out projects. It's
Mm.
like, yeah, totally
Well,
done this before.
what do you think of this? And maybe you've done this on one of those breaks, but taking one of those breaks, like you said, and working
Mhm,
on a side project. Like, I wanted to learn Golang. I'm gonna go to Austin
mhm.
for a week.
Yeah, yeah. I usually start
Not
them.
maybe
That's where I
not a
start
week.
them. Yeah, that's
You
where I
start them
start
while you're
them.
out. Mm,
Yeah, because I started VisualKit in like a hotel lobby.
mm,
I started it there because I knew it's like that's the part where I'm also the most
mm,
motivated
mm,
to, I could program all night in that environment, right? It's a new
mm,
project, right? It's a
mhm,
blank slate,
mhm,
So I spent most of the time like building that first kind of like parser and page view collector in the lobby, you know. But that was the same idea of right of like, all right, how fast can I like basically like just collect page views, put them in a
mm,
database somewhere. That was the whole point of that
mm,
project. But yeah, that's
mhm,
what I normally do. I normally do the beginning part there. Or I try to do some initial like naming of stuff.
mm,
I always end up buying a domain name when I travel.
mm.
So
Didn't you buy Founder Zero while you were traveling? Or
I
did
think so. Yeah, I
you
think I
think
did.
so?
I buy a lot of domain names. A
Yeah.
lot. Too
Mm.
many. I was reading like before like 1997, I think they were free. And I was like, what? They're free?
Really? Domain
Yeah.
names for free?
When I
Well, they were
first like
trying to inspire people in
yeah,
order to,
exactly. Nobody wanted them. I was like, oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Well, it's like Bitcoin, right? Nobody cared about Bitcoin back in
Yeah.
the day. It's like,
Yeah, it was like
whatever,
less than
who
a penny when I was
cares?
in
Yeah.
college. Yeah. I was
And
like,
now, oh my gosh, could you imagine? Again, a lot of people read
I try
stories
to think
about it all
about
the
that.
time.
Yeah. I try to think
Yeah.
about
Don't think about that. Don't think about that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a great place to end this episode.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
good.
and we can go into after hours.
Yeah, take a
Thanks
break,
everybody for
take some time
listening.
off, and yeah.
Rest and recharge, like Jill said. Great advice. Thanks everybody.
All right. Bye.